All right. Good evening, everybody. You're welcome to this SEMA 5.0 seminar. We hold this seminar once in every quarter. That's when we hold. It's a quarterly meeting we hold for members of the group to learn one or two things about the future, to prepare the youth for the future. So with us here is Dr. Ademefun Deji. So we would like to get a profile about you, and then we continue the section, sir.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you so much, comrade. Good evening, everyone. Please confirm you can hear me. I'm excited to be here. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. My name is Adedeji Peter Ademefun. I'm a development practitioner. I'm a political economist. I have a PhD in political economy and development studies. Alumni of the Harvard International School for Leadership, the African Center for Leadership Strategy and Development, and the School of Politics, Policy and Governance in the pioneer set. I was one time Student Union Government Secretary General of the University of Benin, and currently what we used to do as student advocacy led us to development work, and then we call it now the advocacy within the development sector. So basically, again, to thank the organizers, Comrade Bishop, for inviting me, and I'm excited to share knowledge around the topic, the cost of politics and governance, basically espousing inhibitions to democratic dividends in our contemporary Nigeria. Maybe I should stop at that for now, except if you want me to proceed. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So, sir, we have commenced the section, so you can just hit on the topic, then we ask our question as we go on.
Great. Thank you so much, comrade. So basically, let me start from talking about our kind of democracy. And democracy is an extant practice. There are contexts in the world where democratic tenets are practiced. So you talk about the rule of law, you talk about citizens' participation. And the fulcrum of democracy actually is representative governance by citizens, which is quite exigent for a democratic governance to survive. Apologies if you are hearing my dog barking in the background, so sorry about that. But I'll just proceed to also put on some context that there's no democracy without elections, but just to have a twig that election is not democracy. I'm going to repeat that quickly. There's no democracy without elections, but then election is not democracy. So election is a means to attaining a democratic state. It's not an end in itself. So that we have a credible election, a credible electoral outcome does not translate to good governance, which is a crux of democracy. We want to see that democratic principles and tenets are enshrined, and the dividends of democracy is really delivered to the citizenry. So in the ancient Athens, in Greek city, there used to be what is called the popular democracy, where everyone converge at a city center in Athens, and then everyone decides what should happen in the polis. The polis is the city-state. But then where the concept of elections came in is when it became extremely difficult for the entire citizens of a geopole to, converge every other time to take decisions. So representative governance came into play. So what that means, for instance, is assuming that we were going to take decision on fuel subsidy removal, and everyone across 36 states plus FCT 774 LGAs should converge at the central location to take that decision. That would be a chaos. that would be a serious state of anarchy. So that's where the concept of democratic and participatory democracy came in from. That can we have representative to speak for us, to represent us in democratic positions. So let me flip it a bit. Please confirm if you can still hear me. So I
Yes,
know
sir,
we're
we can
all
still
together.
hear you, sir.
Excellent. So I'm going to flip it a bit. There would have been no need for elections if we had all resources available to the citizenry. So I'll tell you what I mean. In economics, of course, we may have heard that human wants are insatiable, right? And the resources are scarce. So why we have people represent us to authoritatively allocate scarce resources is the reason why we have elections in the first place. There would have been no need for election if all our needs and wants, we can have them easily and all of that. But because resources are scarce, and then you need to authoritatively allocate these resources to competing ends, there are several competing ends, then there was need for to repose power and authority in an entity that can authoritatively allocate that. So I will set that prism. The first is there is no democracy without elections. The second is that election is not democracy. Election is a mechanism to attaining a democratic state. What attains a democratic state is accountable governance systems. And I'm going to say that again. What attains a democratic state is accountable governance system within the purview of the public financial management system and the fiscal and monetary policies that operate within the context of economics and the nexus between politics. Sorry, I'd like you to please, just note your questions and then we can come back to them. But let me just give a broader outlook on all of those. Now, because resources are scarce and there's need to allocate resources within the purview of the ambit of the law, it was exigent to conduct elections, right? So for elections to be free, fair, and credible within our context, the Electoral Act had, for the oftenest time, been, there's been the review of the Electoral Act, and the last one was still the Electoral Act 2022 as amended. So for every election cycle, there has been the amendment of the Electoral Act for every election cycle. So for Electoral Act 2022, elections expenditures, and I'm going to quickly go into that. Election expenditures had a maximum for each of the elective positions according to the Electoral Act. So Section 88 of the Electoral Act 2022 as amended stipulates, and I quote, that the maximum election expense to be incurred by a candidate for a presidential election shall not exceed 5 billion naira. Number two, for the gubernatorial election, governorship election shall not exceed 1 billion. For Senate and House of Representatives, 100 million and 70 million respectively. For the State National Assembly, 30 million. For chairmanship of a local government or area council, 30 million. And then for councillorship position, 5 million. But the Electoral Act 88 subsection 8 also says that no individual or other entity shall donate to candidate more than 50 million naira. So you'll see that the context of the Electoral Act 2022 as amended is very clear. But then the case within our context, and that's where the cost of politics and governance comes in, and how it impacts the delivery of democratic dividends to the citizenry. So the political class, politicians, the political parties, a good number of the candidates see election as transactional. So it's electoral politics, but because the cost of buying votes, for instance, is humongous. For the 2023 general elections, one of the political parties sold form for as much as 100 million naira. I'm wondering how many Nigerians can afford to purchase a form for 100 million naira. So what that means is that already it's a prism to begin to, increase the cost of governance because it has become transactional. So it's a form of investment. So people invest in such elections and then expect to recoup their funds when they win. And because of the winner takes it all kind of politics that we play, the kind of politics where it's about I win or I win. There's no spirit of sportsmanship. It's about winning the election at all costs. So there are several components to it. No literature has been able to successfully account for the cost expended by political parties or political party candidates in elections. And I must say that today, and I'm saying that authoritatively. I've studied elections in Nigeria since 2011, and I can tell you for free that no literature has been able to capture successfully the cost expended in elections since the wake of democracy in our country. So I'll put some context to it. Edward Toff, in his book, The Economic Cycle of Election and the Political Economic of Election, it posits that there's a deliberate attempt to weaponize poverty when elections are coming close. And I'll tell you what that means. It means that there's a deliberate attempt to impoverish the people prior to an election so it is easier to buy their votes. So it creates a clientele and patronage system such that people sell their votes and then the politicians are happy to buy the votes, they win, and they recoup their funds. So let's do a quick mathematics. If you have your calculator, it will be great. So imagine that a minimum of 3,000 naira, it's a vote, just in a minimum. So if you take Ekiti elections, where you had a popular phraseology, Dibo Kosebe, what that is saying is vote and cook a pot of soup. And people sold their votes for as low as 3,000 to 5,000. So if we take the lower bit, if I need 1.8 million votes at the minimum, the last general election, I'm not sure the president had some level of vote. I can't remember exactly now, but a bit above some of the statistics I've just mentioned. So if I need 1.8 million votes to win a presidential election, at 3,000 naira, I will spend 5.4 billion naira. That is aside the cost of the billboards, the radio jingles, the campaigns, the political meetings. And comrade, you can remember, even at the University of Benin, some of the engagement we had some of these shenanigans within those systems. Well, by the grace of God, we're able to surmount all of those. So look at it. The Electoral Act as amended 2022 has said the maximum cap for a presidential election is 5 billion. I need 5.4 to buy 1.8 million votes at 3,000 naira. If you increase that threshold to 5,000 naira, that means I'm going to spend much more than 5.4 billion naira just to buy votes. That's giving you a perspective. So what that means is that by the time I win the election, because of the winner takes it all, the politics of acrimony and sentiment, time I win that election, I create a patronage system, a clientele system, such that I continue to service the pool of supporters that has either assisted me to win the election or to meet some of the engagements or commitment I made prior to me winning the election. I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. So I'm contesting for a presidential position, and then a region of the country that's very exigent has said, for that presidential position, for us to support you, we will need 10 honorable minister positions in your cabinet. Or you are going to build us 34 bridges and it must be awarded to a particular contractor. Can you still hear me, please? Just to be sure.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. So I'm giving you perspective. So I've succinctly explained how cost of politics deepens corrupt practices within governance spaces and how it impacts on democratic dividends. So by the time I win that election, I need to pay back. Some persons from the business class, for instance, have said, can you please give me tax holiday and then give me a franchise to be the sole distributor of this product in Nigeria, and then I can bankroll your election to the tune of 500 million naira. And then I signed on to the contract. There are some component of course, that's a bit silent on the side. Some scholars does not believe in spiritism and voodooism, but it does exist within the African context. That people go the extra mile to win elections at all costs, including employing or deploying all spiritual means possible, mobilizing, set of people who can either cause mayhem, hijack ballot boxes, and all of that. So, just summarizing all of that, what that means is that by the time I am declared winner of the election, there is a national cake that has been prepared, and there are a lot of individuals, interest group that are waiting to benefit from that government. What that does to us is the costs, if we are to award a construction project to a particular vendor at 5 billion naira, because the vendor had supported my election, there's a lot of bottleneck within that space that's going to, from 5 billion, eventually, maybe what will be deployed for that project will be less than 1 billion naira because of the middlemen that will be involved through that procurement process. So what that does to democratic dividends is that eventually people suffer. What happens to democratic dividends is increasing cost of prices in the market, because the political class will find a way to continue to service the interest of stakeholders, to service the political agenda, and to ensure it remains relevant to win the next elections. So having said all of that, what does it really mean for democratic dividend? One, it means the instrument of the law will not be strictly adhered to. That is the first thing. One of the tenets of democracy is the rule of law. If you look at the 2023 general elections, the number of cases at the tribunals is evident from the way the elections are turned out. And this is not speaking from any point of sentiment. It's speaking from, did that election really reflect the people's choices and voices? Maybe yes, maybe no, but then a candidate had been declared and sworn in as president. The rest is history. But what that means again is that the people suffers. Now, if you tweak the table a bit, from the point of campaigns and election, the people, a good number, also compromise their position, because there's a locked-in thinking that the election period is the only time to really benefit from a government. So there are people who are seated to say, if I don't get my own largesse now, it will be difficult when this candidate wins an election. So what that does to our electoral politics and governance, because of the cost of politics, intellectuals that should be part of a political system or electoral contest, they stay away because they can't afford such funds to engage a political process. If you recall, not too long ago, the Not Too Young to Run Act or bill was passed into law. I'm not sure anyone recalls that. And then it lowered the age to contest for chairmanship positions, Senate, House of Rep, and all of that. But the question is, how many young people can afford the cost of politics? And that is the reality. How many young people have been in the corridors of power or have not been in the corridors of power that can afford the humongous cost of procuring a presidential form for 100 million naira? And the answer is very, very few, maybe none. And that's why you see that there's a kind of schism between the haves and have-nots. The talakawas continue to suffer it. Decisions are made around the corridors of power, maybe not without the interest of the citizenry. Unfortunately, the citizens themselves are not mobilized enough or sensitized enough to hold government to account, because a good number have voted based on primordial sentiments, ethnicism, religion. Oh, it's my brother, I will vote for him. It's Yoruba, it's Hausa, I will vote for him. It's Igbo, oh, he's a Christian, oh, he's a Muslim, and not about really the quality of the people that are elected into governance spaces. So because there are a lot of the polity, the governance system is rentier in nature. So you'll find one political office holder having more than up to 50 to 100 special assistants on several issues. And then each of those offices needs to be funded. So it comes to question, do we really need a democracy? Should we continue to pattern our democracy as practiced in advanced climes like the United States of America? Is our democracy driven by ideologies or driven by primordial sentiments, interests, and what have you? Are political parties in Nigeria well mobilized? If you look at political parties, from that point, we are skewed because there is limited or near no presence of internal democracy in Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you so much. So I was making a point about internal party democracy. How does Yes, I was talking about internal party democracy. How does candidates emerge at the level of political parties? You will see that at the level of political parties, there's a principle of
Dennis, we can't hear you clearly, sir.
Hello, sir. Hello, Doc.
Apologies, my network buffered a bit. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Oh, great. So I'm just going to, summarize my thoughts around political party and internal party democracy. So how does candidates emerge from a political party structure? That's a huge one. There's a lot of politics, within the ambit of that party. From the political party membership, membership database. So if I join this political party in 2024, I am most likely not going to be considered for a political position much more than someone who joined in 1999. So there's that ranking that happens. But then the kind of politics that also happens is that I can come in today and then bamboozle my way through the political party structure, fund the political party heavily, and then I become the kingmaker within that party structure. So you will see that from the point of your recruitment of political party candidates to the point of electoral context that exacerbates the cost of politics, an eventual announcement of the winner, swearing in, and then the clientele and patronage system that exists within that structure. What that means is that the cost of governance will continue to exacerbate and it impacts democratic dividends eventually. So how do we deal with some of these issues? The first thing is we need to get political party internal processes right. Some of us and some other scholars have even mentioned, do we really need political parties? Can we have the principle of single candidature? Did it work? There were proposals on the floor of the National Assembly, but that again also has its own, mix. In the United States and other advanced climes, you have single candidates leading their campaigns, and at the most they are able to make a statement from such campaigns. So how do we deal with some of these issues? More people need to get involved in that process. I am not an advocate, and Comrade was talking about being apolitical. If you are not interested in politics, you are already participating in politics, because there are gladiators in politics, and then there are transitionals, and then there are people that we call the laggards. They are not interested, but they are apolitical. It's a category. There's a categorization. So the more people get involved, the more people come out and mobilize to vote, the more we continue to engage the system, the more we can begin to bridge the gaps. If we leave political and electoral context to, in quotes, not so learned mediocres who only want to go within the mainstream for selfish, obnoxious, and nefarious political interests, to continue to, ride roughshod on the commonwealth of the Nigerian citizenry, then we have done a disservice to our country and to our nation and to the future of our unborn children. And I'm saying that without any sense of immodesty, and I'm saying that because the future we know is now. So the question is, how do we deal with it? So there are a lot of bottlenecks, red tape that also happen within the civil service structure, and these are also politically motivated. The nexus between politics and the economy is that the resources are scarce. There is need to authoritatively allocate these scarce resources within competing end, and that is why there are a lot of power play, power relations that happen that determines the outcome on delivering on democratic dividends in Nigeria. I'm going to stop at that now and have questions, and then we can interact more. Thank you so much.
In fact, this is a very brilliant, wonderful, concise lecture, sir. And what surprised me is, from what you said, I have been playing politics, but I don't have a deep knowledge as deep as what you have told us this evening. The truth is, well, because you study political science and you have a deep knowledge, but I keep wondering sincerely that with all this wealth of knowledge, I know some persons like you will know it. Is it that we don't know the right thing to do, or we know it and we are? Because from what you said, I'm just exposed to about the amounts that is expended on a presidential election. This is the first time I'm knowing about it, on governorship election. So I'm surprised. So what is happening in our country? That is it that people, the system embraced it, or why is it that we don't control most of these things that you have said?
Thank you so much, comrade. Excellent question. First, I had mentioned ethnicism and religious sentiments, right? People vote for different reasons. And I also told you from the book, The Political Control of Economy by Edward Toff, how the political class deliberately weaponize poverty. So they deliberately make people hungry before an election cycle, so it is easier to buy their vote. And it's extant, it's everywhere. Now people know what to do, but a popular phraseology, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. Do we really have separation of powers within the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary? Or one arm of government determines who gets what, when and how, within the ambit of the law. So I am the president and the governor. I can decide not to conduct a local government election, or I even appoint. I have so much power. And then the spoils of office are really, really attractive. In advanced climes, people who go to the upper house or lower house are those who have retired, have contributed significantly to development narratives, and are now giving back to the society. Not people who see politics as an avenue to expand their income or expand their wealth, not really giving back to the society. So, coming back to your question, do we not know what to do? Yes, we do know what to do. But if you have read the book, The Prince, it says, preach peace, don't practice it. And that's what we have within our politics. So we have a lot of extant laws and principles in books, but they are just in government shelves packing dust. The reality is far from what is written in the law, and that's where we need to get it right. There are some postulates around: do we really even have a constitution? What do we really need to do about the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Because at the time when that constitution was enacted, did it really meet the aspiration? That first clause that says, we the people of Nigeria, was it really we the people, or a few that determined the course of our existence till eternity, except something changes drastically? And that is why you and I, everyone, need to continually be the voice to bridge the gaps. We need to get involved. Some people are scared to die. Anyway, everyone is going to die. What is important is if you can be received by God in heaven. That's the most important thing. Everyone at some point will die. But a lot of people are afraid of the risk of getting involved in the mainstream. Even at what you do in church, in mosque, in your office space, everywhere, somebody is there that hates you with a passion and wants to have you eliminated. So it's not about politics, because politics itself is ubiquitous. It's in the family, it's in the church, in the mosque, everywhere you go, there's an element of politics. So just responding to your question, yes, we know what to do. Development sector experts, like some of us, civil society actors, and some key advocates are bridging the gaps. And if not for these voices, we would have gone into a state of nature where life was brutish, nasty, and short. And it will be so nasty that it will be worse than what we have experienced in a couple of months within our context in Nigeria. Thank you, comrade.
Okay. Do anybody have a question? Or just let's be brief. I presume that we would have written down our questions now so that we can ask and get answers to them. Please just unmute yourself and ask your question. We have the next 1 minute to do that. If nobody, then we'll start wrapping up.
Good evening once again, and thank you for this information that you just let us in. May God bless you, and also thank you for your time. May God bless you in Jesus' name. Amen.
You're welcome. Thank you, ma. Amen.
So my question is, you said that the Electoral Act, it was amended 2022, and you stated one of their reasons that a political party, a candidate not supposed to spend more than a certain amount, like the presidency and all that. Now, can a party selling a form for 100 million, although I know you said that there's no real separation of power in Nigeria, would it be, why is it that the Electoral Act, because they are in charge of election, why can't they stop such acts from political parties that sell expensive forms?
Excellent question, and I'm trying to pick the name. Oche, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Oh, excellent. So two things. The first thing is that the political class are a product of a political party. or have interest or bias for a political party. That's the first thing. The second thing to say is that political parties have their own constitution that guides them. INEC only regulates some of those components of how political party candidacies emerge, right? INEC also has the statutory powers to register political party or deregister political parties. Now, who is INEC? INEC is the election management body who appoints the sheriff or the chair of INEC. The executive. The executive. Bishop, if I were the president and I have appointed you as chairman, if your care is not taken, it will be a bit difficult to do outside the directive of the president, even when we claim to have an independent body called the Independent National Electoral Commission. These are unspoken codes. How did the chairman emerge in the first place? So these are some of the clientele and patronage system I talked about. There are interests. So for a political, why the choice of Mahmoud and not Professor Oravier in Uniben or Professor Hassan in ABU or Professor Jacob in the East or Professor Agbon or Professor Che in Benue? Why the choice of Mahmoud? And that's the rentier kind of politics that we play. So there are interests and there are influences within the system that determines that. So if we are working for same agenda, it's difficult to stop such enactment or actions by political party structures. And that is why the campaign has been, can the judiciary really be the judiciary? So that the rule of law can prevail within this democracy that we say we practice. Of course, you know about our claim to practice federalism, but what we practice is quasi or pseudo-federalism and not federalism in its real sense. So my direct response to that will still be the first statement I made. He who pays the piper dictates the tune. It's a bit difficult, at least for now. When we get our constitution really fixed, when we get the right people in the right spaces, then maybe we can have the narrative change entirely. Thank you for your question, Uche.
Thank you so much, sir. Please, I will say one or two things. You are a politician. I don't know, you are. Okay, you are politically inclined because you are a professor of politics. So at least you should know how other countries, how they run their own politics. And I actually understand the fact that you said our constitution is a mess. So for now, until it is amended, we cannot have a say in all this. So I just want to ask, sir, is because I guess to an extent, I know we imitate the politics of the US. That is the politics of the US. That is, like, to an extent, I know we try our best to imitate it. So I don't know. In the US, is the executive also in charge of their electoral? The chairman of their electoral act? I just want to know.
Excellent question, Oche. So the first thing for you to know is that political parties in the United States of America are primarily driven by ideologies, right? And that's why you would have the liberalists, the socialists, political party, the ones they call the leftists, and all of that, right? That's the first thing to know. Do we have, okay, you have the Republicans and the Democrats, right? They are clearly driven by ideologies, right? Do we have such political party structures here? Maybe not. But some scholars have argued that cannot say our political parties are not driven by ideology, because a bad ideology is an ideology, if you know what I mean. So there's an Can you hear me, please?
We can hear you now.
Hello, I'll just proceed and assume you can hear me. So if an ideology is a bad ideology, it's an ideology. If the ideology of a political party is to win it all, ride roughshod on the and control the resources of the state and fritter it with reckless abandon, is an ideology. But in the United States of America,
You've gone off. We can't hear you now. If you can hear me.
what? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can
So
hear
I
you
was
now.
talking about the United States, where you have political parties driven by ideologies, the Republican, the Democrat, and their constitution seem to speak to the ideals of a true democratic system. Not that you don't have party politics in the United States. Of course, the cost of elections is expensive, it's not cheap, but they are more driven by more idealists and ideologists that fit within the context that they operate. Now, and the laws are very clear. It doesn't matter who is sitting as the sheriff of the election management body in the United States. The law is the law. If we make the law work within our own context, it won't matter who becomes the INEC chairman. To that question. Thank you so much, Uche, for your question.
Thank you so much, sir.
Any other question?
Sorry.
Yes, I have a question.
I have to put this. Sorry. Like, you just open my eyes. Now, although I know that the America, they have the Republicans and the Democrats, but now I actually understand that they are being run by ideologies, which we lack in Nigeria. And just like you said, you can't say there's no ideology. Look, our ideology can be like maybe we are ideology of money making, something like that. So maybe our politicians are driven to, they are just going there to make money, something like that. Thank you so much for this eye opener.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, sir, for the class. My question is that looking at the cost of democracy in Nigeria, the cost of probably from the context of election, to run an election, just like the analysis, the short analysis you gave that's okay, looking at a geographical area whereby we have a kind of a population, and at least to win a person, you need to spend spend the amount of 30,000 naira. Then relating it to the population of the present Nigeria, so which means the cost of election is actually on the high side, even more than 100% of the allocated more than 100% of what the constitution actually stated that okay, with the presidential election, a candidate shouldn't spend more than a particular amount of money. So I'm now directing my question to looking at the cost of democracy from the perspective of election in Nigeria. Is it possible to have a better democracy? Because based on that, I believe that democracy from this angle, because to run this election, looking at the kind of influence whereby you have to meet some people, then at the end of the day you have to bargain in terms of like giving out contracts, even though they didn't, such person didn't, is not actually um shouldn't benefit, or such contract shouldn't be awarded to such a person. So is it possible? So from that, I believe that democracy is not working. So is it that, is there a better way of democracy, or what's the solution that you think that you can prescribe, sir?
Excellent question, Top. Am I pronouncing that well? I see Top. Aul.
Sir.
So democracy
Brother, is your name
is
Chop Ao? Or you tell him your name?
It's actually to Paul. This is actually another account, that was why. Olabody is fine.
Okay, Olabode, thank you for your question. So democracy is borrowed. Let me start from there. So the country that we are, trying to model the pattern of our democracy towards the United States, I've had over 100 years experience. There are countries of the world that have had more experience. So our democracy is evolving. I will not say democracy in itself is bad. It is the way we have contextualized democratic tenets that is making our democracy not seeming to work. On the flip to it, to some people, democracy works for them. If we had a military dictatorship right now, our freedom of expression, trust me, from what we know from the extant military interregnums in Nigeria, will be taken away, and that's the reality. There's no Facebook, no Instagram, no Telegram, nothing. You can't say anything on the media. So one thing that democracy brings to the table in any context is freedom of expression. But do you know, and I can tell you for free, that that freedom of expression is currently being gagged by the political interplays and powers that be. If you recall, there was the FOI Act that made provision for people to be able to, ask questions and get answers to it. But is the FOI, Freedom of Information Act, really working? That's one question. Last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there was an attempt to regulate civil society actors. What that would have done to our country, it would have silenced completely that fifth realm of governance that is bridging the gap between the people and the governance structure that we have in our country. But if I come back to your first question, will this democracy really work? And I had, if you research about one of my papers that I've written in the past, I'd come up with a good governance schema. This is not cast on stone, but I'm saying that if we have internal party democracy that ensures that the recruitment pathways for in political parties is free, fair, and credible, and the citizens are well sensitized and mobilized to make informed choices at the ballot, and then the true voices of the and choices of the electorate is reflected in the ballot with no undue political interference, instability, and insecurity, there is a possibility that we will attain a democratic state. If, now this is the caveat, if the citizens are mobilized enough to hold government accountable, right? Hold government to account. Without accountable governance system, there is no democracy. And I told you that election is not democracy. Election is a means to attaining a democratic state. If the people cannot ask questions, If the voices of the people is silenced, then there is no democracy. And that is the reality. So it is not a state of frustration. It is a state of where Olabode, Ochei, Bishop, Oladepo, Edo's princess, all of us need to get involved at our own level in the mainstream, but then go with a mind of integrity, which you cannot compromise. Integrity. If you don't have it, you don't have it. Forget it. Integrity. Some persons, with all due respect, in the history of this country, there was a man in the House of Assembly that was called Mr. Integrity. I'm sure you understand the narrative, and the rest is history, right? Integrity in its true sense, that there is a prophet that have said, I will not bow to Baal, irrespective of what it is, right? And we need such people to come into the mainstream of government. If not, we go nowhere. And that's the reality. Thank you so much, Olabode, for your question.
All
So
right.
last question, sir. Please, sir. Yeah, thank you very much, sir. I didn't understand what you mean by the internal political party. Then talking about the aspect of the accountability, we've seen, just like what you said, I love when you were able to explain so that the last 2 years we experienced here in Nigeria, whereby during the Tinubu Buhari's regime era, whereby even the Twitter was actually banned. Then there was a policy as regard the limitation of how citizens could criticize the doings of the government or his governance. So the aspect of accountability, I believe that is actually a kind of it has been limited based on the current policy we have here in Nigeria. Then taking accountability to the aspect of the judiciary system, we could see that even the judiciary system, the constitution is not really followed here in Nigeria. We've seen different cases issue, just like when we experienced during the last election here in Nigeria. So that's all I have to say, sir.
Thank you so much, Olabode. So first, I'll explain again what I meant by internal party democracy. So what that is saying is that how do candidates emerge as flag bearers of political parties? There are a lot of mistrust, distrust, shenanigans within that system. Most of the time, the quality of candidate that is presented to Nigerians is a product of the internal party democracy or undemocratic system within political parties, because we are limited within the few candidates that are presented to us within any electoral context. So if there are candidates from a few 1, 2, 3, 4 political parties, how did those 4 candidates emerge? That's what I meant by internal party democracy. And that is the point. If you watch the live broadcast of the major political party primaries that for the presidential election, you are going to see a lot of shenanigans and a lot of things that happen, power plays and all of that will happen within that space. Having said that, in terms of accountable governance system, there's a popular phraseology, maybe you've heard it: he who must come to equity must come with clean hands. If I have sold my vote, Olabode, if I have sold my vote, do you think I have the onus, the locus standi? Do you think I will have the boldness to confront my representative and demand accountability? I'll leave you to reflect on that question, because it's a rhetorical question, albeit. So it's a bit difficult, because the people also have locked-in thinking that once you don't get your own largesse at the point of campaign, you are done for and you will not get any democratic dividend eventually. So there's a need for a lot of sensitization that needs to also happen at that level. Have you observed, I don't know what part of the country you live in or what part of the world, but in Nigeria, have you observed that during elections, that malam that sells suya or watermelon or what have you, you will never find them during election within your spaces. They return back home to vote, and voting because they understand the power of the ballot. And what that translates to is that there are deliberate attempts also in political science, we call it gerrymandering. Gerrymandering, I don't know if anyone have come across that concept before. What it means is deliberately delimiting constituencies to favor a particular section of the country. That is also part of politics. Currently, we have about 170,000 polling units in Nigeria. How many of these polling units active during elections? What are the deliberate attempts to ensure the polling unit where the other candidate have a stronghold is disrupted? Antics that happens within the system. So to answer your two questions, trust me, I will still say he that comes to equity must come to with clean hands, which is very important in this narrative. So are we saying it is yet Uhuru? No, it is not yet Uhuru. We will continue to engage. We will continue to speak up. We will continue to contribute our quota until the son of nobody can become somebody without knowing anybody. I'm quoting one of our previous nationalists in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Doc, we are very grateful. And before I wrap up, I don't know if anybody has a question again, just briefly, because we have almost exceeded the time we allotted to this program. Joy and Taiwo, are you having anything to say before I wrap up? All right.
Hello, sir.
Can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the enlightenment. So my question is, with the rate of inflation in Nigeria now, everything is going high every day. Even the rate of foodstuffs, rate of petroleum is going higher. And in Nigeria, none of the masses can come out or to question the government. In this situation, what can we do as the citizen of the country? What can we do?
Hello. I didn't get your question because my network buffered a bit. Can you please repeat?
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I said, with the rate of inflation in Nigeria now, like in other developed countries, the citizens can come out and complain in the country. But now here in Nigeria, it's not like that. So, like, as citizens in Nigeria, since we said democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So, what do you think? What do you think you can do as citizens in Nigeria? Because things is getting higher and higher every day.
Sorry, I'm not sure I got the question correctly, but I heard you talk about inflation. And I can quickly respond to that by saying inflationary trends are determined by the network now. Inflationary trends are determined by the forces of demand and supply, and that's why what you talk about when you talk about macroeconomic policies and microeconomic policies, expansionary policies and the tractionary policies, right? But what causes inflation more, aside the forces of demand and supply, is our net export and import ratio, right? If there is flight of your currency, then you would demean the quality of your currency Can you still hear me?
We can hear you now, sir.
In our country, we import everything, including toothpick. We import everything, and this is very deliberate by the political class. And you will not think I blame everything to the political class, because politics determines a lot of things, really. Now, because there are a lot of gatekeepers within that, where people benefit. You recall that in this country we are told that fuel subsidy is removed. At the inaugural speech of Mr. President, he had announced the removal of fuel subsidy. But do you know that fuel subsidy has been brought back from the back door? And you will see what we are buying. I don't know how much it sells in your area. We buy 170, 168, as the case may be, where we are now. If you increase the cost of such essential commodity, it has bandwagon effect on the cost of transportation, on the cost of market prices generally. And that's why you see the challenge we are having currently in the country. Fuel subsidy removal, if you ask my opinion, was ill-timed. It ought to have been incrementally, delivered as far as this was concerned. You face it, you prepare the mind of the people, and then you remove gradually. The alibi is that there are a lot of gatekeepers that are benefiting from that. Have you not imagined why we export our crude to neighboring countries, refine them, and then bring them back? And then there's a question around the recent Dangote refinery that is just opening. All of those are politically motivated structures, and I tell you, take it to the bank. Dangote does not have that kind of metal. Yes, the richest in Africa, but there are richer people in this country than Dangote that no one knows about, right? They only contribute within a business cycle that people like Dangote fronts for. You can go and conduct your research very well. The rising market prices are a lot of issues around the macro and microeconomic policies that we currently operate. Again, this is the political economic nexus of our democracy. Thank you. I can't recall who asked the question. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll be calling off the day. I know we may have some other questions to ask, but Doc, please, the thesis or the paper you told us about concerning that you wrote about good governance, please, you will send it to us, because sometimes we study pages of books and all chapters, and we do analysis also. Because in the group, we have different families. We group them into family subgroups where we discuss issues also. So please, if you don't mind, you can send it to us, the link. I can get the link, and we look at it also, and maybe, because what we are trying to do, we are trying to prepare. We don't know who will transform the nation. But I tell you, I believe in the transformative power of words. Something can transform a nation. You can speak to somebody here tomorrow and say, the topic I heard about is, and that is our major objective in the SIMA family, seeing how we can transform our nation, how we can change our nation, how we can utilize the gifts that God has given to us to see that our nation becomes better. So please, if you don't mind, you can send the link to me. I will give them in the group, and we will share it, and we'll look at it. If there's any question, we'll ask you concerning the paper, if you don't mind. So thank you very much, sir. So I want to say thank you very much. But before I do that, I want to call on Mrs. Oche. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right, on behalf of the SIMA Mentorship family, can you appreciate our speaker before we call it a day? Briefly.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Dr. Adedeji Ademefun, I guess I'm correct. Sincerely, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. We pray may God continue to bless and guide you.
Amen.
And higher you go in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Thank you that you're not even like you avail your time. We really appreciate it, and we've learned a lot. And with this, we know that if we call you next time, you'll still come and educate us more. thank you. We are really grateful. May God bless you, sir.
And thank you for your engaging. Invited. The paper do, or you can Google my name online. You of such papers. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, sir.